The year was 2287, and humanity had finally cracked the secret of faster-than-light travel. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Discovery, watching the stars bend and twist as they dropped out of hyperspace. His crew had been traveling for 3 weeks beyond the Sol system, and this was their first stop in uncharted territory. The sensors beeped and Lieutenant Ben Rogers looked up from his station with wide eyes. They had found something big. A massive structure floated in the darkness of space. It was a station unlike anything humans had ever built. The thing was easily 50 kilometers across, with ships moving in and out like bees from a hive. Jake ordered the Discovery to hold position while they observed. Engineer Melissa Torres ran scans and reported that the station was broadcasting signals on hundreds of frequencies. Some of those signals were definitely attempts at communication. Jake decided to respond. He transmitted a simple mathematical sequence followed by greetings in every Earth language they had on file. The response came within minutes, but it was not what they expected. A fleet of 12 warships broke formation from the station and moved toward Discovery at incredible speed. Jake felt his stomach tighten, but he held his ground. Running now would make humans look weak or guilty of something. The alien ships surrounded Discovery in a standard intimidation pattern. Then the communication came through. The voice was translated by their computer and it sounded cold and dismissive. The speaker identified himself as Commander Thexel of the Krelvian Dominion. He demanded to know why an unregistered vessel was in Dominion space without proper authorization. Jake explained that humanity had no knowledge of the Dominion and meant no offense. They were explorers seeking peaceful contact with other civilizations. Thexel laughed. It was a harsh sound that made everyone on the bridge uncomfortable. He informed Jake that all intelligent species in the galaxy belonged to the Dominion, whether they knew it or not. Earth would need to submit to Dominion authority immediately. They would pay tribute and accept guidance in all matters of technology and governance. Jake felt his jaw clench. He had not traveled across the stars to bow to some bully with a bigger ship. Jake politely declined. He suggested instead that Earth and the Dominion could work together as equals and share knowledge for mutual benefit. The silence that followed lasted almost a full minute. Then Thexel spoke again, and this time there was no mistaking the threat in his voice. He said that Earth had 1 week to send representatives to the Dominion capital and formally submit. If they refused, then the Dominion would send a peacekeeping force to ensure compliance. The alien ships pulled back and returned to the station. Jake ordered Discovery to jump back to Earth immediately. The trip home took 2 weeks, and every day Jake thought about what was coming. He reported directly to Admiral Lisa Chen, who commanded Earth's newly formed defense network. Lisa listened to Jake's report with a grave expression. She had spent 20 years building Earth's orbital defenses, and now she would find out if they were good enough. The Dominion did not wait a full week. 6 days after Discovery returned home, the aliens arrived in force. 200 warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. They were impressive vessels with sleek designs and weapon ports that glowed with barely contained energy. The fleet moved toward Earth in perfect formation, broadcasting demands for immediate surrender. Admiral Lisa Chen stood in the command center deep beneath Colorado watching the displays. Every defense satellite, every orbital platform, and every ship in Earth's fleet was now under her direct control. The Dominion ships reached the orbit of Mars, and still they came forward. Lisa opened a channel to the alien fleet, and her voice was calm and clear. She told them that Earth wanted peace but would never submit to threats or domination. She asked them one more time to turn back and open diplomatic talks. The response came from General Thexel himself. He had been promoted after discovering Earth, and now he led this invasion force. He said that humans were children playing with toys they did not understand. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 4,000 years, and one primitive species would not change that. Then he made his mistake. Thexel ordered a single ship to fire a warning shot across Earth's moon. The blast carved a trench 200 kilometers long across the lunar surface. Lisa watched it happen and felt something cold settle in her chest. She had given them a chance. Now she would give them something else. Lisa Chen transmitted one message on all frequencies, so that every ship in the Dominion fleet would hear it. She also made sure it broadcast back to Dominion space so their leaders would hear it too. Her words were simple and direct. Keep away from Earth, baby. This is your only warning. The Dominion fleet advanced. Lisa gave the order and Earth's defenses came alive. Kinetic weapons that had been silently drifting in the asteroid belt activated and launched. They were simple chunks of metal accelerated to near light speed. No shields in the galaxy could stop them because they carried too much mass and momentum. The first salvo tore through the Dominion formation, destroying 17 ships before the aliens even knew they were under attack. The Dominion ships scattered trying to reform, but Earth's AI-guided drone swarms were already among them. Thousands of small craft, each carrying plasma cutters and explosive charges, swarmed over the alien vessels. They cut through hull plating and detonated inside critical systems. It was chaos and confusion, and the Dominion had never faced anything like it. General Thexel tried to rally his forces, but human hackers had already infiltrated his communication network. False orders went out telling ships to fire on each other. Real orders were blocked or delayed. The Dominion fleet, which had never lost a battle in its long history, was being torn apart by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. The battle lasted 6 hours. Earth lost 3 orbital platforms and took damage to 2 of their largest defense stations. But the Dominion lost over 190 ships. Only 3 vessels managed to jump away to hyperspace and flee. One of them carried General Thexel, who sat in stunned silence watching Earth disappear from his screens. Admiral Lisa Chen surveyed the wreckage floating in Earth's orbit. There were bodies out there, both human and alien. There were burned ships and twisted metal. She felt no joy in the victory, only a deep sadness that it had come to this. But she also felt something else: pride. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in the only language that bullies understood. Jake Morrison watched the battle from Discovery, which had been held in reserve. He saw the Dominion ships burn and flee. He knew this was just the beginning. The Dominion would not accept this defeat. They would come back with more ships and more weapons. But Earth had sent a message today. Humans would not bow. Humans would not break. And anyone who came to Earth looking for slaves would find warriors instead. The news of the battle spread across Dominion space faster than anyone expected. The 3 surviving ships that escaped from Earth carried with them sensor recordings and trauma that no Dominion warrior had ever experienced before. When General Thexel arrived at the nearest Dominion outpost, his hands were still shaking. He transmitted his report to the capital world of Krelvos Prime and waited for the storm that would surely follow. High Chancellor. Fexthor received the report in his throne room, surrounded by advisors and military commanders. He watched the battle recordings 3 times in complete silence. His advisors whispered among themselves, wondering if this was some kind of elaborate hoax. The Krelvian Dominion had not lost a major battle in 4,000 years. They had crushed rebellions and conquered entire star systems without breaking stride. Now a single primitive world had destroyed nearly 200 warships in a matter of hours. Fexthor stood and declared the report to be enemy propaganda. He refused to believe that humans could possess such military capability. He ordered General Thexel stripped of rank and imprisoned for cowardice and spreading false information. Then he zawanded War Marshal Drexnor, the most decorated military commander in Dominion history. Fexthor gave him a simple order: take the Grand Armada to Earth and reduce the planet to ashes. Make an example that would terrify the galaxy into submission for another 1,000 years. Drexnor accepted the mission without hesitation. He began pulling ships from every corner of Dominion territory. Patrol fleets were recalled. Garrison forces were mobilized. Within 2 weeks, over 2,000 warships gathered at the staging point near Krelvos Prime. It was the largest military force the Dominion had assembled in centuries. Drexnor planned to jump directly to Earth and overwhelm their defenses through sheer numbers alone. On Earth, the mood was tense but determined. President Karen Wells addressed the planet from the United Nations building in Geneva. She spoke calmly about the threat they faced and the preparations underway. She appointed General Marcus Stone to oversee the complete militarization of the Sol system. Every resource would be dedicated to defense. Every able person would contribute in some way. Humanity had survived ice ages and world wars and nuclear standoffs. They would survive this too. Admiral Lisa Chen worked 18-hour days coordinating the defense network. She knew the Dominion would return with overwhelming force. Earth had won the first battle through surprise and tactics, but those advantages would not work twice. She needed something more. She needed allies or better technology or both. The problem was that Earth had no allies in a galaxy dominated by the Krelvians. Dr. Nicole Harper led a team of scientists working to reverse engineer the captured Dominion technology. They had salvaged dozens of intact systems from the destroyed ships, including shield generators and power cores, and faster-than-light drives. Nicole was brilliant and relentless. She slept 4 hours a night and spent the rest of her time in the lab. Her team made breakthrough after breakthrough. Within 3 weeks, they had working prototypes of hybrid human Dominion systems that outperformed both original designs. Captain Jake Morrison received new orders that surprised him. He was to take Discovery on a covert mission deep into Dominion space. His objective was to make contact with species that might be unhappy under Dominion rule. Intelligence suggested that not all members of the Dominion had joined willingly. Some had been conquered. Some were little more than slaves. If Earth could find allies among the oppressed, then maybe they had a chance. Jake chose his crew carefully. Ben Rogers would serve as tactical officer because the man could think 3 steps ahead of any enemy. Melissa Torres would handle engineering because she could fix anything with spare parts and determination. They left Earth in secret and jumped toward the coordinates provided by intelligence. Their destination was a mining world called Tarkos 7 on the outer edge of Dominion territory. The journey took 10 days. Discovery traveled through hyperspace along routes that merchant ships used to avoid Dominion patrols. When they arrived at Tarkos 7, Jake saw a planet stripped bare by industrial mining. The surface was covered in open pit mines and processing facilities. Orbital stations hung above the planet like metal vultures. Jake felt sick looking at it. They landed at a remote mining camp using false identification codes that intelligence had provided. Jake and Ben went into the camp while Melissa stayed with the ship. The workers there were from a species called Kelons. They were tall and thin with 4 arms and large eyes that looked sad and tired. Jake approached one of them carefully and used a translation device to communicate. The Quelon worker, whose name was Zixari, looked around nervously before speaking. He told Jake that the Quelons had been conquered 200 years ago. Their homeworld had been strip-mined, just like Tarkos 7. Most of their population now worked as forced labor throughout Dominion space. They had tried to rebel twice, and both times the Dominion had responded with brutal crackdowns. Thousands had died. The spirit of resistance had been crushed. Jake told Zixari about Earth and the recent battle. He showed him recordings that had been transmitted across Dominion networks before being censored. Zixari watched in silence as human defenses tore apart the Dominion fleet. When the recording ended, the Quelon looked at Jake with something new in his large eyes. Hope Zixari said that he would carry this message to the resistance leaders who still existed in secret. He could not promise anything, but he would try. Jake gave him a communication device that would let them contact Earth securely. Then he and Ben returned to Discovery and left Tarkos 7 before Dominion patrols could investigate. On the way back to Earth, Jake made contact with 4 other species. Each one had a similar story of conquest and oppression. The insectoid Vrix had been enslaved for their ability to work in toxic environments. The amphibious Krell had lost their ocean worlds to Dominion colonization. 2 other species shared tales of cultural genocide and forced assimilation. All of them listened to Jake's message about Earth's defiance. All of them promised to consider helping when the time came. Meanwhile, Admiral Lisa Chen received a warning from an unexpected source. Someone within the Dominion had transmitted a coded message to Earth. The sender identified himself as Ambassador Zixari, and he provided detailed information about the Grand Armada being assembled. 2,000 ships. War Marshal Drexnor in command. Expected arrival at Earth in 4 months. The message also included technical specifications for Dominion weapons and shield frequencies. It was intelligence gold. Lisa immediately shared the information with Dr. Nicole Harper. Nicole used the shield frequencies to develop countermeasures. She designed new weapons specifically to penetrate Dominion defenses. General Marcus Stone used the timeline to accelerate construction of defensive platforms throughout the Sol system. Every moon and asteroid was being converted into a weapons platform or sensor station. President Karen Wells made a bold decision. She authorized the use of Earth's quantum communication network to broadcast a message directly into Dominion space. Human hackers had cracked the Dominion's relay stations and could now inject messages into their networks. Karen recorded a speech that would be heard on hundreds of Dominion worlds. She spoke directly to the oppressed species. She told them that Earth stood for freedom and dignity for all intelligent beings. She said that humanity would never bow to tyranny and never abandon the fight for liberty. Any species that wanted freedom was welcome to join Earth. Any species that came as conquerors would face total war. The message was simple and powerful. The broadcast caused chaos throughout Dominion space. Rebellion sparked on a dozen worlds. Workers refused orders. Sabotage incidents increased. High Chancellor Vexthor responded with brutal crackdowns, sending troops to restore order. But every act of violence only created more resistance. The Dominion was fracturing from within. War Marshal Drexnor watched these developments with cold calculation. He knew that destroying Earth was now more important than ever. If humans were allowed to survive, they would inspire endless rebellions. The Dominion would collapse within a generation. He accelerated his timeline. The Grand Armada would launch in 3 months instead of 4. Earth would burn and the message would be clear. Defiance equals extinction. The Sol system transformed into the greatest fortress humanity had ever built. General Marcus Stone stood on the observation deck of the orbital command station, watching construction crews work around the clock. Every asteroid in the belt was being hollowed out and fitted with railguns. Every chunk of rock larger than a house became a potential weapon platform. The work never stopped. Shifts changed, but the construction continued day and night. Jupiter's moons had become massive shipyards. Dr. Nicole Harper's hybrid designs were being built at a pace that seemed impossible. The new warships combined human innovation with Dominion shield technology, creating vessels that were faster and more maneuverable than anything the galaxy had seen. Each ship carried weapons designed specifically to counter Dominion defenses. Nicole walked through the shipyards, inspecting every detail personally. She had lost weight and her eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, but she never slowed down. Commander Greg Hayes was chosen to lead the first squadron of the new fighter craft. The pilots called them Hornets because they were small and fast and deadly. Greg spent every available hour in the simulator learning how the Hornets handled. His wingman, Lieutenant Amy Foster, flew with him during the test runs. Amy was fearless and brilliant. She pushed the Hornets to their limits, finding capabilities that even the designers had not anticipated. The fighters could accelerate at rates that would kill pilots from most other species. Human bodies could endure more G-force than the Dominion had planned for. Amy discovered that if she cut the inertial dampeners and relied purely on her pressure suit, she could execute turns that no alien pilot would attempt. It was dangerous and painful, but it gave them an edge. Greg approved the tactic and made it standard training for all Hornet pilots. Captain Jake Morrison returned from his mission with news that gave everyone hope. 5 species within the Dominion had agreed to help Earth. The Quellons, led by Zixari, would sabotage Dominion supply lines. The Vrix would cause chaos in the communication networks. 3 other species promised to strike at critical moments during the coming battle. It was not a large force, but every bit of help mattered. When facing 2,000 warships, Jake reported directly to Admiral Lisa Chen. She listened carefully and asked detailed questions about the capabilities and reliability of these allies. Lisa was a pragmatist. She would plan for the best outcome but prepare for the worst. She incorporated the potential sabotage into her battle strategy, but did not rely on it. If the allies came through, it would be a bonus. If they did not, Earth would still fight. President Karen Wells made another broadcast to the galaxy. This time, human hackers ensured it would reach every Dominion relay station and every occupied world. Karen stood before the camera looking tired but determined. She spoke about freedom and dignity. She said that Earth did not want to rule anyone. Humanity simply refused to be ruled. Any species that wished to join Earth in freedom was welcome. Any species that came as conquerors would be met with total war. The message resonated across hundreds of worlds. More rebellions erupted. Dominion governors reported increasing incidents of sabotage and resistance. High Chancellor Vexthor ordered brutal crackdowns. Public executions were broadcast as warnings. Entire cities were destroyed to make examples. But the violence only made things worse. Every act of cruelty created more rebels. The Dominion was bleeding from 1,000 cuts. War Marshal Drexnor watched these developments with growing concern. He knew that time was not on the Dominion side. Every day that passed gave Earth more time to prepare, and gave the rebels more time to organize. He accelerated the timeline again. The Grand Armada would launch in 2 months. He pulled ships from the most distant territories, leaving only skeleton crews to maintain order. Everything was being gambled on destroying Earth. Back in the Sol system, the preparations reached fever pitch. Mars had been converted into a massive military base. Training facilities covered the red planet's surface. New recruits learned how to operate the defense systems and how to fight in zero gravity, and how to survive when their ships were breached. The instructors were veterans of the first battle. They taught hard lessons because they knew what was coming. Venus had become a research facility. Dr. Nicole Harper moved her primary lab there because the harsh environment provided natural security. She was working on something new. The captured Dominion ships had quantum communication systems that worked faster than light. Nicole believed she could weaponize the technology. If she could create a jammer that disrupted quantum entanglement, she could cut the Dominion fleet off from Central Command. It was theoretical, but Nicole had made the impossible happen before. Mercury's orbit held the largest concentration of solar collectors humanity had ever built. They gathered energy from the sun and transmitted it wirelessly to the defense platforms. Earth's weapons would not run out of power as long as the sun kept burning. General Marcus Stone personally inspected the collector arrays. He knew they would be priority targets when the battle started. Each array had automated repair drones and redundant systems. The outer planets served as early warning stations. Saturn's moons bristled with sensors that could detect ships dropping out of hyperspace anywhere in the system. Uranus and Neptune had smaller installations, but they extended Earth's sensor net to incredible distances. Nothing would approach the Sol system without being detected. Admiral Lisa Chen would have hours of warning before the enemy arrived. Earth itself had become an armed fortress. Orbital platforms surrounded the planet in multiple layers. Ground-based laser arrays pointed toward the sky, ready to reach into space. Every major city had bunkers that could shelter millions. The civilian population had been drilling for evacuation procedures. Everyone knew their role. Everyone understood the stakes. Greg Hayes led his Hornet squadrons through combat drills every day. They practiced hit-and-run tactics. They practiced coordinated strikes against capital ships. They practiced flying through debris fields and asteroid belts. Amy Foster developed new attack patterns that relied on speed and unpredictability. The other pilots followed her lead because she had not lost a single wingman during training. Jake Morrison was given command of a new destroyer called Vanguard. It was one of Dr. Nicole Harper's hybrid designs built from the ground up to fight Dominion warships. Ben Rogers served as his tactical officer. Melissa Torres ran the engineering section. The crew was small but experienced. They had all volunteered for the most dangerous assignments. Jake drilled them relentlessly because he knew that hesitation in battle meant death. Admiral Lisa Chen finalized her battle plan. She divided the defense forces into 3 groups. The outer defense would engage the enemy in the asteroid belt using the hidden weapons platforms and Hornet squadrons. The middle defense would form around Mars' orbit with the main battle fleet. The inner defense would protect Earth itself with the orbital platforms and ground-based weapons. It was a plan built on defense in depth. The Dominion would have to fight through multiple layers, and each layer would cost them dearly. 2 months passed in a blur of activity. The entire human race worked toward a single goal: survival. Old national boundaries meant nothing now. Former enemies worked side by side. Languages and cultures blended as people focused on what they had in common. They were all human. They all called Earth home. They would all fight to defend it. Dr. Nicole Harper completed her quantum jammer. The device was massive and required enormous amounts of power, but tests showed it worked. She could disrupt Dominion communications across a range of several million kilometers. General Marcus Stone immediately ordered 20 more units built and placed throughout the Sol system. When the battle started, the Dominion would be fighting blind and confused. War Marshal Drexnor arrived at the edge of the Sol system with the Grand Armada. 2,000 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Sensor arrays across the system lit up with warnings. Admiral Lisa Chen received the alerts in her command center. She took a deep breath and opened a channel to the entire defense force. Her voice was calm and steady. This was the moment they had prepared for. The Dominion broadcast a final demand for surrender. Drexnor himself delivered the message. He said that Earth had 1 hour to power down all weapons and prepare to receive occupation forces. Failure to comply would result in planetary bombardment and complete extinction of the human species. The message was meant to terrify. It was meant to break human resolve. Admiral Lisa Chen responded with the same words she had used 3 months ago. "Keep away from Earth, baby." Then she gave the order to activate all defense systems. Across the Sol system, weapons came online. Hornet squadrons launched from their carriers. The hybrid warships moved into position. 2,000 Dominion ships began their approach. The second battle for Earth was about to begin, and this time the stakes could not be higher. War Marshal Drexnor divided his massive fleet into 3 waves. The first wave consisted of 500 heavy cruisers designed to absorb punishment and break through defensive lines. The second wave held 800 destroyers and frigates meant to exploit any gaps. The third wave contained his command ships and the most powerful dreadnoughts in the Dominion arsenal. Drexnor was confident that numbers alone would crush Earth's resistance. No defensive force could stand against such overwhelming power. The first wave entered the asteroid belt, moving in tight formation. Their shields glowed with power as they advanced. Then the belt itself came alive. Hundreds of asteroids that had appeared dormant suddenly activated. Railguns hidden inside the hollowed rocks opened fire. Chunks of metal accelerated to near light speed tore through the Dominion formation. Ships that had shields designed to stop energy weapons found themselves helpless against simple kinetic projectiles, carrying massive momentum. 17 cruisers exploded in the first 30 seconds. Their reactors detonated, sending shockwaves through the tightly packed formation. Other ships scattered, trying to avoid the incoming fire, but the railguns were everywhere. Every asteroid was a potential threat. The Dominion commanders tried to target the weapons platforms, but as soon as they destroyed one another would activate. It was like fighting a swarm of hornets. Kill one and 2 more appeared. Commander Greg Hayes led his Hornet squadrons into the chaos. 200 small fighters screamed through the debris field, moving at speeds the Dominion sensors could barely track. Greg's voice crackled over the comm, giving orders. Alpha Squadron hit the cruiser on the left flank. Beta Squadron, go for the destroyer cluster. Charlie Squadron with me. The pilots responded with precision born from months of relentless training. Lieutenant Amy Foster dove her Hornet through a gap in a cruiser's shield envelope. She flew so close to the hull that her wingtip scraped against the metal. Then she released her payload directly into the ship's main engine port. The nuclear warhead detonated inside the cruiser. Amy pulled up hard, fighting against G-forces that would have killed most alien pilots. Her pressure suit squeezed her body, keeping blood in her brain. She blacked out for 2 seconds, but her training took over. When her vision cleared, she was already lining up her next target. The first wave pushed deeper into the belt despite horrific losses. They had numbers and they used them. For every Dominion ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The hidden railguns ran out of ammunition. The asteroids became silent chunks of rock again. But the first wave had been reduced from 500 ships to less than 300. War Marshal Drexnor watched from his flagship and felt something he had not experienced in decades: doubt. The second wave accelerated through the wreckage of the first. They reached Mars orbit, where Admiral Lisa Chen waited with Earth's main battle fleet. She commanded from the bridge of the flagship Resolute, surrounded by displays showing every ship in the system. Her fleet numbered only 200 vessels, but each one was a hybrid design combining human and Dominion technology. They were outnumbered 4-1, but Lisa had advantages the Dominion did not expect. Dr. Nicole Harper activated her quantum jammers. 20 massive devices scattered throughout the system came online simultaneously. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Dominion. Their faster-than-light communication network collapsed. Ship captains who had relied on central coordination for their entire careers suddenly found themselves isolated. Orders from War Marshal Drexnor never arrived. Tactical data stopped flowing between vessels. The Dominion fleet was blind and deaf. Lisa gave the order to engage. Earth's hybrid warships opened fire with weapons designed specifically to penetrate Dominion shields. The alien vessels tried to respond, but their coordination was gone. Individual captains made individual decisions, and those decisions often conflicted. Some ships advanced while others retreated. Some fired on targets their allies were already engaging. The disciplined formation dissolved into confusion. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the destroyer Vanguard from the center of the battle. His tactical officer Ben Rogers identified a critical weakness in the Dominion formation. 3 command cruisers had clustered together, trying to restore communication with each other. If those ships were destroyed, the entire second wave would lose what little coordination they had left. Jake made a decision that most commanders would consider insane. He ordered Melissa Torres to divert all power to the engines and forward shields. Vanguard accelerated directly toward the command cruisers. Dominion weapons hammered the destroyer's shields. The forward display turned white with energy discharge. Crew members grabbed their stations as the ship shook violently. Jake kept his voice calm. Hold course. Maintain speed. Almost there. Vanguard punched through the Dominion line like a spear. The destroyer flew between two command cruisers so close that their shields intersected. Ben Rogers activated the payload they had been carrying. Hundreds of drone missiles that had been attached to Vanguard's hull released simultaneously. The drones had been powered down and shielded, appearing as nothing more than debris. Now they activated all at once. The drones swarmed over the command cruisers. They were small and fast, and there were too many to stop. Some carried plasma cutters that sliced through armor. Others had electromagnetic pulse generators that fried electronic systems. Still others were simple kinetic kill vehicles that rammed into critical points at high speed. The three command cruisers died within minutes. With them died any hope of the second wave coordinating their attack. The battle around Mars raged for 3 full days. Ships burned and exploded. Debris created new hazards. Rescue operations ran constantly, pulling survivors from damaged vessels. Earth's fleet took heavy casualties. 40% of the hybrid warships were destroyed or too damaged to continue fighting. But the Dominion's second wave was shattered. Less than 200 of the original 800 ships remained combat-capable. The aftermath of the Battle of Sol changed everything. News of the Dominion's catastrophic defeat spread across the galaxy within days. Species that had lived under Krelvian rule for thousands of years suddenly saw that their oppressors could be beaten. Rebellions erupted on dozens of worlds. Planetary governors who had enforced Dominion law with brutal efficiency found themselves facing angry populations that no longer feared retaliation. The empire that had seemed eternal began to crumble. High Chancellor Vexthor watched his authority collapse in real time. His own advisors turned against him. Military commanders refused orders. The Dominion fleet was scattered and demoralized. When a coalition of reformist leaders marched into his throne room, he did not even try to resist. They arrested him and charged him with crimes against countless species. His trial would last months, but the outcome was never in doubt. The age of the Krelvian Dominion was over. President Karen Wells received delegations from over 100 different species in the weeks following the battle. They came to Earth seeking alliance or protection, or simply to see the planet that had accomplished the impossible. Karen met with each group personally despite her exhaustion. She listened to their stories of oppression and their hopes for freedom. But she made one thing clear to everyone. Earth would not become a new empire. Humanity had not fought to replace one tyrant with another. Karen proposed something different. She called it the Galactic Cooperative. It would be a voluntary alliance of free worlds dedicated to mutual defense and open trade. No world could dominate another. No species would be forced to join. Decisions would be made by a council where every member had equal voice regardless of their size or military power. The first law written into the cooperative's charter was simple. Freedom is the birthright of all intelligent beings. The proposal met with overwhelming support. Within 3 months, over 200 worlds had joined the cooperative. Species that had never trusted each other found common ground in their shared desire for independence. The Quellans, who had helped Earth during the battle, became founding members. The Vrix brought their biotechnology expertise. Other species contributed their own unique strengths. What emerged was something the galaxy had never seen before. A true alliance based on cooperation rather than conquest. Captain Jake Morrison was promoted to Commodore and given command of the first cooperative fleet. It was a mixed force of human and alien vessels working together. His flagship was a new design called Pathfinder, built specifically for exploration and peacekeeping. Ben Rogers served as his second in command. Melissa Torres designed the ship's hybrid systems, incorporating technology from 6 different species. Their mission was to protect newly independent worlds from Dominion remnants who refused to accept the new order. Some Dominion commanders did refuse. They gathered their loyal ships and tried to hold on to fragments of the old empire. Jake's fleet confronted them again and again. Sometimes battles were necessary. Other times, Jake negotiated peaceful surrenders by offering integration into the cooperative. He discovered that many Dominion soldiers had only followed orders out of fear. Given a choice, they preferred peace. The scattered resistance gradually faded as more ships joined the cooperative or simply went home. Admiral Lisa Chen retired from active military service. She had given everything to Earth's defense, and now she wanted to build rather than fight. President Karen Wells appointed her as Earth's first ambassador to the Cooperative Council. Lisa brought her strategic mind to diplomacy. She helped draft treaties and resolve disputes between member worlds. Her famous warning to the Dominion had become a symbol known across the galaxy. Keep away from Earth. Baby was now a phrase that meant standing up for your rights and refusing to be bullied. Commander Greg Hayes and Lieutenant Amy Foster established the Cooperative's Fighter Academy on Mars. Pilots from 50 different species came to train in human combat tactics. The academy taught more than just flying. It taught the philosophy behind human military doctrine: speed over armor, initiative over orders, creativity over rigid planning. Amy personally instructed the advanced combat course. She had recovered from her injuries during the battle and refused to let them slow her down. The Academy's motto came from her suggestion: freedom through strength. General Marcus Stone oversaw the gradual demilitarization of the Sol system as peace took hold. The weapons platforms around Earth were deactivated. The hollowed asteroids were converted into research stations and habitats. The massive solar collector arrays at Mercury began powering civilian projects instead of defense systems. Marcus knew that Earth needed to maintain a strong military, but he also believed that strength should serve peace, not perpetuate war. The balance was delicate, but humanity managed it. Dr. Nicole Harper led a scientific exchange program that revolutionized technology across the cooperative. She shared human innovations in return for alien knowledge. The Quellons taught advanced mathematics that had taken them millennia to develop. The Vrix contributed biological engineering techniques. Other species brought their own expertise. Nicole's team synthesized all of it, creating breakthroughs that benefited everyone. Medical treatments, agricultural improvements, clean energy systems. The exchange program accelerated advancement by centuries. War Marshal Drexnor survived the Battle of Sol. His crippled flagship was captured by cooperative forces. Many people wanted him executed for his role in countless atrocities, but President Karen Wells made a controversial decision. She offered him a choice: face trial and likely execution, or provide testimony about Dominion war crimes and help locate hidden weapons caches and slave facilities. Drexnor chose cooperation. He spent years providing information that helped the cooperative free millions of enslaved beings and dismantle dangerous weapon stockpiles. Drexnor lived under house arrest in Geneva. He was not forgiven, but he was given purpose. Jake Morrison visited him regularly. Their conversations started as interrogations but evolved into something unexpected. Friendship might be too strong a word, but they developed mutual respect. Jake saw that Drexnor had been a product of his society. The War Marshal had never questioned the Dominion's right to rule, because no one in his culture had questioned it for thousands of years. Now exposed to different ideas, he changed. 5 years after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy looked completely different. The Krelvian Dominion had reformed into a smaller federation that renounced conquest and applied for cooperative membership. Over 200 worlds flew the cooperative banner. Trade routes that had been restricted under Dominion rule now flourished. Cultural exchange programs brought species together. Technologies spread freely. Art and music and literature crossed species barriers. The galaxy was louder and messier and more chaotic than it had been under the Dominion. It was also more alive. Earth became a center of learning and culture. Universities welcomed students from hundreds of worlds. Human cities filled with aliens experiencing freedom for the first time. Problems arose, of course: cultural misunderstandings, economic disputes, political tensions. But the cooperative had mechanisms for resolving conflicts peacefully. The council mediated. Diplomats negotiated. Occasionally, military force was necessary to stop violence, but it was always a last resort. A memorial was erected in orbit around Earth's moon. It listed the names of every human and alien who died defending freedom during the Battle of Sol. The structure was made from melted debris from both Dominion and Earth ships. Enemy and ally joined together in death. President Karen Wells gave a speech at the dedication ceremony. She spoke to representatives from 200 worlds gathered in person and billions watching across the galaxy. Karen reminded everyone that humanity had not fought to dominate anyone. Earth had simply refused to be dominated. That distinction mattered. Power without purpose became tyranny. Strength without compassion became cruelty. The cooperative existed to ensure that no species would ever suffer under empire again. Every world had the right to chart its own course. Every being had the right to live free. Those principles were worth fighting for and worth dying for. The memorial would stand forever as a reminder of the cost of freedom and the courage required to defend it. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. 200 species stood together remembering the fallen. Then the silence broke as children from a dozen different worlds released glowing orbs that drifted through space, like artificial stars. Each orb represented a life lost. Each light was a promise that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. War Marshal Drexnor sat on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Glory and watched his carefully planned invasion collapse into chaos. The quantum jammers had been a surprise he never anticipated. The ferocity of human resistance exceeded every projection. His advisors urged caution, but Drexnor had committed too much to retreat now. He ordered the third wave forward. His command ships and dreadnoughts would finish what the first two waves had started. The third wave was the most powerful force in the Dominion arsenal. Massive dreadnoughts that could level planets moved toward Earth's orbital defenses, their weapons charged with enough energy to crack a moon. War Marshal Drexnor broadcast on all frequencies demanding Admiral Lisa Chen's surrender before he was forced to destroy Earth itself. The response came not from Lisa but from President Karen Wells. Karen's voice was tired but unbroken. She told Drexnor that humanity would rather die free than live as slaves. Earth would fight until the last ship was destroyed and the last person fell. There would be no surrender, no submission, no compromise. The message was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every species under Dominion rule heard it. Every rebel and every slave knew that somewhere in the cosmos one planet was standing firm. The third wave reached Earth's orbital defenses. General Marcus Stone activated every weapon platform surrounding the planet. Ground-based laser arrays fired into space. The beams were powered by Mercury's solar collectors, giving them nearly unlimited energy. Dominion shields absorbed the hits, but the lasers never stopped firing. Shield generators overheated and failed. Dreadnought armor began to glow red, then white, then melted. Commander Greg Hayes rallied the surviving Hornet squadrons for one final attack. They were exhausted and low on ammunition, but they flew anyway. Amy Foster led a suicide run against Drexnor's flagship. She cut her inertial dampeners completely and pushed her Hornet to maximum acceleration. The G-forces crushed her body against the seat. Blood vessels burst in her eyes. She maintained consciousness through sheer willpower. Amy's Hornet slammed into the Eternal Glory's shield generator at a significant fraction of light speed. The impact created an explosion visible from Earth's surface. The flagship's shields collapsed. Suddenly, the most powerful ship in the Dominion fleet was vulnerable. Amy ejected at the last possible second. Her pod tumbled through space until a rescue ship grabbed her 2 hours later. Then the promised help arrived. Quellen's ships dropped out of hyperspace behind the Dominion fleet. Frick's biovessels appeared on the flanks. 3 other allied species joined the battle. It was not a large force, but they struck at supply ships and communication relays. The Grand Armada, which was already reeling from Earth's defenses, now faced attacks from within. Ships that had been counting on resupply found their logistics chain severed. War Marshal Drexnor knew he had lost. The Grand Armada was destroyed. His flagship was crippled. Earth still stood defiant. He sent one final transmission to High Chancellor Vexthor on the distant capital world. The message was simple and devastating. They fight like demons. The humans cannot be conquered. Then he ordered the surviving ships to retreat. Admiral Lisa Chen refused to let them regroup. She ordered every operational ship to pursue. The retreat became a rout. Dominion vessels scattered in every direction trying to escape. Human ships and their new allies hunted them through the outer system. By the time the pursuit ended, only a handful of Dominion vessels had escaped to hyperspace. The Grand Armada that had numbered 2,000 ships was reduced to fewer than 50 survivors. Earth had won, but the cost was terrible. Orbital stations burned. Ships floated dead in space. Thousands of humans and aliens lay dead among the debris. Admiral Lisa Chen stood in her command center, surrounded by damage reports. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion and grief. But Earth was free, and the galaxy would never be the same.